Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. I've gathered a collection of stories sent in by real people who have experienced things that simply shouldn't be possible. These aren't your typical urban legends. These are personal accounts from individuals who were left shaken to their core. Before we dim the lights and dive into the darkness, make sure you're comfortable, because once we start, there is no turning back. Let's explore the thin veil between our reality and the unknown. Our first story comes from Mark, a seasoned hiker who thought he knew the woods like the back of his hand. It was a late October evening in the Appalachian Mountains. The air was crisp, and the sun was dipping below the horizon faster than he anticipated. Mark decided to set up camp near a clearing he hadn't noticed before. As he was pitching his tent, the woods went completely silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive, heavy stillness that made the hair on his arms stand up. Mark told me that he felt like 1,000 eyes were watching him from the tree line. He tried to brush it off as woods fever, but then he heard it, a low, rhythmic tapping coming from a large oak tree just 20 feet away. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a fingernail hitting wood. He turned his flashlight toward the sound, but there was nothing there, just the gnarled bark of the old tree. He crawled into his sleeping bag, clutching his pocket knife, praying for the sun to rise as the tapping moved closer to his tent. The next story takes us to a small apartment in Chicago where Sarah had just moved in. It was an old brownstone with beautiful architecture, but a strange energy. Every night at exactly 3:14 a.m., her landline phone would ring. When she answered, there was nothing but the sound of heavy, labored breathing and the faint sound of a music box playing a melody she didn't recognize. She blocked the numbers, she unplugged the phone, but the calls kept coming through the speakers of her computer and even her television. Sarah eventually called a technician, thinking it was a cross-wiring issue. The technician spent hours looking at the lines and finally walked back into the living room, face pale as a sheet. He told her there were no active lines connected to her unit and hadn't been for years. As he spoke, the television behind him flickered to life, showing a grainy black and white image of a child sitting in the very room they were standing in, holding a small music box and looking directly into the camera lens. Then we have the account of David, who worked the graveyard shift at a local library. It was a massive, labyrinthian building with levels that went deep underground. One night, while shelving books in the basement, he saw a tall figure in a long coat standing at the end of a row. He called out, thinking it was a patron who had stayed past closing. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, unnaturally still. When David approached, the figure didn't walk away. It simply dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind the smell of ozone and old paper. Terrified, David ran for the elevator. As the doors were closing, he saw the figure again. But this time, it was much closer, standing just outside the gate. Its face was a featureless blur, except for two burning pinprick eyes that seemed to glow with a dull yellow light. The elevator rose slowly, the slowest it had ever moved, and David could hear fingers scratching against the metal floor of the lift from the outside. When he reached the lobby, he quit on the spot and never went back to that street again. Finally, we have a story of a haunted mirror. Elena bought a beautiful, silver-framed antique mirror at an estate sale. She hung it in her hallway, and for a few days, everything was fine. But then, she started noticing things in her reflection that weren't in the room. A door that was supposed to be closed would appear open in the mirror. Or she would see the reflection of a cat walking behind her, even though she didn't own any pets. The reflection was slowly beginning to deviate from the reality she lived in. One evening, Elena was brushing her hair in front of the mirror. She stopped, but her reflection didn't. In the mirror, she saw herself continue to brush, a slow, methodical stroke, and then her reflection leaned forward and whispered something against the glass. Elena couldn't hear it, but she saw the glass fog up from the reflection's breath. Horrified, she covered the mirror with a heavy sheet, but she could still hear the muffled sound of scratching coming from behind the fabric throughout the entire night.
These stories remind us that the world is much stranger than we often care to admit. Whether it's the quiet woods, a busy city apartment, or a simple antique, the paranormal can manifest in the most mundane places. All of these people were just like you and me, until they weren't. They now live with the knowledge that something else is out there, watching and waiting. It makes you wonder what might be happening just outside your field of vision, or right behind you as you watch this video. If you've ever had an experience like the ones we talked about tonight, please share them in the comments below. We love reading your accounts, and it helps the community feel a little less alone in their fear. It's important to document these events, even if they seem impossible. Your story might be the one that helps someone else make sense of their own terrifying encounter. We are all searching for answers in a world that often refuses to give them, and your voice is a vital part of that search.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend who loves a good scare. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates and more terrifying tales from the real world. We have plenty more stories to tell, and I wouldn't want you to miss a single one. Stay safe out there, keep your lights on, and I will see you in the next one. Good night.